This video is to help you figure out how to make good TQM decisions inside of the Capsim program. Now, TQM is really a valuable thing for your business. However, it requires a bit more skill to use properly than does doing plant automation or capacity expansion. Let me explain why. When you try and expand your plant, generally you don't have enough cash to just pay up front for a $2, $5, $10 million investment. So what a CFO is going to do is he's going to borrow money to pay for that plant. When he borrows money to pay for the plant, that cash that that he borrows from the bank, he turns into a liability, right? Because it's backed by a liability. When he pays that from cash into a plant, it stays an asset for the company. So the whole equation of assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity still is going to stay the same. But basically what that means is that transferring an asset from cash into an asset of a physical plant is not going to affect your profit at all. You're just changing the form of that asset. Now this is different for TQM. For TQM, you're actually investing in people. Think of it as training. Now, when you train somebody, you've taken cash and you've spent that cash on something, but you can't recoup the cost. In other words, once you train somebody and they decide to leave the company, you cannot transfer that training back into cash. And so effectively that means that you've taken cash and you've turned it into something that can no longer be turned into cash. In other words, you've incurred a loss or an expense. So what that means practically is that when you spend money on TQM, it comes out of your profit. You could theoretically borrow a bunch of cash and drop it into TQM, but you're going to give yourself a significant shortfall in terms of profitability that year. So really what this means in terms of the game is you have to figure out how much money you have to play with. After you do your decisions, get them all set up for all the other screens first, and go into your performance and your income statement. The income statement is going to tell you how much your company is expecting to make in profit for the year. So this company right now is set up to be able to make $5.7 million. Now when we go back to TQM, that means that we can spend approximately $5 million of our profit on improving something in TQM. Now there's 5 general things you could improve here. You could reduce cost of materials, which is the first one right here. You can reduce cost of labor. You can reduce your R&D cycle time, you can reduce admin costs, or you can increase demand. And which one is best really depends upon your team's strategy. The easiest one to do is just cost reduction. Cost reduction is easiest because it immediately reduces your cost and increases your profit. So it's pretty straightforward. Generally speaking, teams that are focusing more upon the low-tech market want to prioritize material. Teams that are focused more on high-tech will want to prioritize labor, but they both help you out your company. The third one's a little more difficult to figure out if it's going to help you or not. If you're a high-tech company, one of the ways you compete successfully against other people is that you move your products to the best position faster than they're able to. R&D can help you with that. R&D also helps later on in the game when you have fully automated plants in the low-tech segment. With those fully automated plants, it takes a really long time to upgrade them to a new size or position. And so sometimes you'll want to spend money on R&D just to help your products be able to move a little bit faster. Admin costs are another area that you can reduce costs in. If you go to your income statement, admin costs are the line right across here. So in other words, $1 million. Now I notice here that $1 million is a lot smaller than my material and labor costs. My material and labor costs are 33 million versus 1 million. But if you look at the TQM impact, it's a lot easier to get the admin costs reduced more. Just remember that even though it's a larger percentage, it's a large percentage of a small number, as opposed to material and labor, which is a small percentage of a very big number. Lastly, we have demand increase. Demand increase is just going to increase your sales versus your competitors. The only downside with this one is that if everybody does it, no one gets the advantage from it. All right, so let's walk through some different scenarios. So looking at the buttons on the left here, you have these little eye symbols. If you click on them, you'll see that they explain what each one is actually going to be doing here. Generally speaking, you have to make a significant investment before you start to see results. Let's say we start with CPI systems and put in $500,000. Once we do that, we'll see that we have a tiny improvement in material costs, but really it's not helping out very much. You can increase it a little more. Let's do vendor JIT as well, so some sustainability. Put it in there again. And now I've tripled my improvement, but now I see I've gone from a 0.1% improvement to somewhere between a 1 and a 0.7% improvement. So it's helping out a bit. Let's hit a little bit more. As you click on the eyes, you can see things like this reduces labor costs. I'll put $500,000 in there. This here is more about demand, which we're going to ignore right now. This is R&D. This one will do both, so we're going to use that. Benchmarking reduces admin costs. I'll go ahead and put money in there as well. Quality function deployment is R&D and demand improvement. Six Sigma reduces material and labor. So right now, the old display over here was at 1.5 million, and you see about a 1% improvement in most of the things that I'm improving. With all the new investment, though, I basically doubled the amount of I put into this, but you can see that some of these are doing more significant changes, like admin costs have jumped to 16%. If you bump it even more, say like 750 in these categories, you'll see it improves even more. Now I go for almost double the material cost reduction by going up to a $5 million spend. So you can see you have to spend a certain amount of money before you get any significant benefits in each area. One of the rules that's important to keep in mind, though, is that diminishing returns do kick in at a certain point. In other words, if you look at this eye where it says budget, this explains that once you get past 2 million on any given initiative, that you stop gaining any benefit from it. In other words, think of training somebody. You can train somebody for an hour or 2 hours and they're getting benefit from it. But at a certain point, keep on training them in the same thing doesn't really affect them in a positive way anymore. So really, if you think about how much to budget for this, you don't want to go over 750 in any one particular budget. You can make your product a little, or make your company move a little bit faster by doing so, but you're really using your money less efficiently than you should. Now you think about this, what are these numbers actually worth? How do we figure out if a 5% improvement in material costs is really helping or not? Way to do this is to go back to your performance. Before, material cost and labor was a total of about $33 million. If you do the math and you open up a calculator, you can just calculate what is 5%, so 0.05 times by 30 million. So what we see here is that even though it's a fairly small number, it's a 5% improvement, we're looking at a 1.5 million reduction in costs in just this year alone. If you think about the course of the game, if you have another 3 or 4 rounds, you're going to get that benefit every single time. Same thing for stuff like admin costs. My admin costs are roughly $1 million, and I have savings somewhere around 40%-ish or so in those. So that gives me another $500,000 improvement. So if you look at the overall case here, I'm spending about $5 million to get about $2 million every single round till the end of the game. So it works out pretty well. You can also see on the income statement that my profit's gone down. However, it hasn't gone down by 5 million. Instead, what's happened is that the TQM is hit immediately, and now I immediately have a reduction in labor and material costs this round. So it's actually really positive because I don't have to wait a year like I do with all the other improvements in factory and plant automation. Instead, you get the benefit right away. So overall, TQM is a really valuable tool you can use in order to make your company a higher performer. It's especially important if your competitors are using it and you're not, particularly with demand increase. The key, though, is just to remember to check and make sure that you're not overspending on it, because there's a certain point where you hit diminishing returns.